Every piece of evidence was fake. The victim was framed as who built the lie.
On June 24, 2016, police arrived at a woman's apartment in Southern California and placed her under arrest. She was accused of violently targeting people she had never met, facing a string of charges that could result in a life sentence. She spent the next 88 days locked inside a jail cell. Because she couldn't pay a $1 million bail, she was held in isolation-adjacent conditions reserved for sex offenders, waiting for a trial for crimes she didn't commit. The architect of this scheme was the new wife of Michelle's ex-boyfriend, and, as investigators would take years to prove, the ex-boyfriend was an active participant, a man serving as a United States deputy marshal. Most true crime coverage ends at the moment a victim walks free. This story goes further, examining the actual cost of reclaiming a life after the system fails this completely, and whether the system ever truly gives it back at all. Escaping a meticulously engineered frame-up is only the beginning of the ordeal. The real, invisible battle is finding a way to move forward, while the person who put you in that cell remains free and employed by the government. In early 2016, Michelle Hadley was a graduate student building a life in Southern California. Her only link to Diaz was a messy breakup and a lingering financial dispute over a condo they had purchased together. That spring, a sophisticated digital forgery campaign began. Fake online accounts and spoofed emails appeared, engineered to look like Michelle was sending violent threats to Ian and his new wife, Angela. The harassment moved into the physical world when Craigslist ads invited strangers to the Diaz home for a staged sexual encounter. Men actually began showing up at the house, believing they were participating in a fantasy Michelle had arranged. When police arrived to investigate these reports, Ian used his authority as a federal marshal to direct the responding officers. He insisted that Michelle was dangerous and needed to be arrested immediately. The frame-up worked because the local police skipped the basic forensic work. They outsourced their investigation to the word of a fellow law enforcement officer, taking his claims as fact while the digital trail went unexamined. The case against Michelle hit a wall for one simple reason. The violent threats from her continued, even while she was locked inside a jail cell without any access to a computer. Investigators finally checked the physical evidence at the Diaz home. On the day Angela claimed she was attacked, the property's own security footage showed that nobody actually arrived at the house. When forensics traced the IP addresses and VPN data, the threatening emails didn't originate from Michelle. They came directly from the Diaz residence. A second digital trail led to Arizona, linking the harassment directly to Angela's family. The digital forensics exonerated Michelle almost immediately once the police looked at the raw data. The evidence of her innocence was available from the beginning. It simply required an investigation that didn't rely on Ian Diaz's word. On January 9, 2017, Michelle Hadley was officially exonerated. The Orange County District Attorney cleared her name, calling her the victim of a diabolical scheme. Consequences for Angela Diaz followed quickly. She pleaded guilty to perjury and grand theft, receiving a 5-year prison sentence for her role in the orchestration. But Ian Diaz, the man prosecutors later identified as the architect of the plan, was not charged. He kept his federal job and his freedom for another 4 years. The timeline reveals a staggering double standard. It took days to arrest an innocent woman, yet it took years for the system to act against a fellow officer, even after his wife had already confessed to the crime. Walking free is only a partial victory. True exoneration remains out of reach as long as the legal system refuses to prosecute the person in power who engineered the crime. In 2018, Michelle filed a federal civil suit against the city and the police. She alleged that investigators had ignored doctored evidence and biased their entire inquiry toward Ian Diaz because he was a law enforcement officer. In April 2021, the city settled with Michelle for a reported $1.79 million. She also received separate, undisclosed settlements directly from Ian and Angela Diaz. 1 month after that settlement, the criminal case finally caught up. A full 5 years after Michelle's exoneration, Ian Diaz was indicted on federal charges of conspiracy to commit cyberstalking and perjury. In 2023, a federal jury convicted Ian on all counts. He was sentenced to 10 years and 1 month in federal prison, marking the final step in a nearly decade-long legal battle. This accountability wasn't a natural result of the criminal justice system. It was the product of a massive, years-long civil effort by a victim who refused to let the system's initial failure be the final word. Michelle has since rebuilt her life. She is now a business owner and a mother, giving birth to her first child on the same day the guilty verdict for Ian was announced. Yet, she continues to manage the documented paranoia and anxiety left behind by the ordeal. She now uses her platform to advocate for domestic violence survivors, focusing on those whose stories are dismissed or ignored by the legal system. This leads back to the central question: can a financial settlement or a delayed prison sentence truly undo 88 days in solitary and years of public shame? Netflix tells this story to millions on July 22nd. Hit subscribe to catch our next investigation, and let us know in the comments, do you think the arresting officers should have faced consequences for ignoring the evidence? Revealing the truth is only half the battle. The real cost of justice is the years of effort required to make a broken system finally listen to the facts.
All right, let's jump straight into this explainer. We're looking at a truly terrifying systemic failure that literally stole a young woman's freedom. It's a story Netflix is actually dropping on July 22nd, and we're going to look closely at the actual facts and mechanics behind this case. We're going way beyond just the moment she finally walked free to really understand what it takes to survive and fight back against a truly diabolical frame-up. 88. I want you to just imagine for a second spending 88 days locked inside an isolation cell for a heinous crime you absolutely did not commit. You haven't sent a single threatening message, you haven't hurt a fly, but you're trapped behind bars.
And get this, she was held on an impossible $1 million bail. But what makes this nightmare so incredibly chilling is who actually put her there. This wasn't some random mistake. It wasn't a stranger off the street. This entire frame-up was orchestrated by her ex-boyfriend, a man whose actual day-to-day job was in federal law enforcement as a U.S. deputy marshal.
Section 1. The unthinkable arrest. To really grasp the sheer magnitude of this injustice, we have to look at how perfectly normal Michelle's life was before the authorities inexplicably showed up at her door on June 24, 2016. I mean, Michelle Hadley was your typical mid-20s graduate student, just building a regular life in Southern California. She had a job, an apartment. She was entirely unassociated with the criminal justice system. She wasn't a case file. She was a person with a bright future. Until, out of nowhere, her past came back to completely haunt her.
And the craziest part? The origin of this nightmare was entirely mundane. Her 2-year relationship with U.S. Deputy Marshal Ian Diaz ended in 2015 over an unresolved financial dispute about a condo they owned together. Just normal breakup stuff, nothing criminal. Ian moved on super fast, and he actually married a new woman named Angela by early 2016.
Section 2. Engineering a frame-up. Now, this diabolical scheme wasn't just some lie told in the heat of the moment. It was methodically, carefully constructed over several months in the spring of 2016. Think about the escalation here. First, they create fake accounts mimicking Michelle to send violent, threatening messages to Ian and Angela. Then they escalate to posting horrifying Craigslist ads inviting random strangers to the house. And the grand finale? Angela stages an actual physical attack and blames the whole thing on Michelle. By the time the police show up, all this fabricated evidence is pointing in exactly one direction.
And when the police did arrive, Ian completely leveraged his position. Leaning heavily on his federal badge, he coldly manipulated those responding officers, telling them straight up that Michelle needs to be in cuffs and in a padded room. He made absolutely sure his fellow officers saw her as a highly dangerous suspect right out of the gate.
Section 3. The toll of 88 days.
The reality of this frame-up is just staggering. Facing the very real threat of a life sentence for attempted forcible rape and stalking, Michelle endured 88 days confined to a wing reserved for sex offenders. She was locked up in isolation-adjacent conditions for 23 hours a day. And incredibly, this blew my mind. Even after she was briefly released on bail, the digital harassment from those fake accounts just kept going, which actually led to her being arrested a second time.
Section 4. Uncovering the digital trail.
Fortunately, this massive, fabricated case finally began to unravel when security footage showed that absolutely no one arrived at the property on the exact day Angela claimed she was violently attacked by men from Craigslist. So to crack this case, investigators had to stop taking a federal marshal at his word and actually look at the data. We're talking IP addresses and VPNs. Basically, these are digital fingerprints that identify a device's actual physical location on the internet and the virtual private networks that people use to try and hide those locations. And here is the massive twist. When investigators finally traced those digital fingerprints, they found that threatening emails were never sent by Michelle, not a single one. They actually originated from Angela's own devices inside the Diaz home and, get this, from a computer located at Angela's father's house in Arizona. So the call was quite literally coming from inside the house. This forensic evidence was absolutely undeniable, and it completely cleared her name. On January 9, 2017, the district attorney officially recognized her not as a criminal, but as an innocent victim of a diabolical scheme. But here's the thing, being cleared just wasn't enough. Michelle was about to begin a massive uphill fight for her true freedom and for some real accountability.
Section 5. The long fight for freedom. Because getting the truth out, that is not the same as getting justice. Michelle had to launch a grueling, multi-year fight against the system itself. Notice this agonizing timeline. While she was officially exonerated in 2017, she had to file a federal civil suit in 2018 just to force accountability. It literally took until 2021 for her civil settlement with Anaheim and for Ian's actual indictment. And it wasn't until 2023, actually on the exact same day Michelle gave birth to her first child, that Ian was finally convicted by a federal jury.
The systemic inequity here is glaring when you compare their fates side by side. Michelle, a completely innocent woman, lost her freedom immediately and suffered 88 days in jail right off the bat. Angela, who actually carried out the fake attacks, served a short 5-year sentence. But Ian, the federal marshal and the mastermind prosecutors point to, he kept his job and his freedom for 5 full years before he ever faced a single criminal consequence.
Through her unwavering fight, she did secure some financial accountability, winning a reported $1.79 million settlement from the city of Anaheim. Her civil suit really exposed how police ignored clearly doctored evidence, essentially outsourcing their own investigation to Ian Diaz simply because, well, he was a fellow cop. She also managed to secure separate, undisclosed settlements directly from her abusers.
Section 6. Afterfall and Resilience. Surviving this complete collapse of the justice system definitely took a toll. Yet, despite the lingering trauma, the intense paranoia, and anxiety documented in her legal filings, Michelle absolutely refused to be destroyed. She rebuilt her life, she became a mother, and today she advocates fiercely for domestic violence survivors, turning her horrific ordeal into a true beacon of hope for people who feel totally unheard by the system. Looking at everything we've just covered, it forces a really hard question. Does financial justice, even a massive settlement, actually undo a stalled career, a shredded reputation, and 88 days in an isolation cell? Does money truly give you your life back when you've had to just sit and watch your abuser walk free for years while you rebuild from scratch? So, as you prepare to watch Netflix tell this incredible story to millions of people, I want to leave you with this final thought and definitely drop your take in the comments. Should the officers who blindly trusted a fellow cop and arrested an innocent woman without verifying the digital evidence have faced consequences too? Let me know what you think. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and remember to keep questioning what you see.